This is Brandon Parker. Welcome to the Legends of Land show, where it's my job to deconstruct the tactics of elite land investors and entrepreneurs, how they think about business and strategies that drive their success. My guest today is Alice Chen, a former M&A lawyer who graduated with her JD. In 2013, Alice was recognized as a top 40 under 40 by Business in Vancouver. She's founded multiple companies with seven-figure revenue and eight-figure valuations, achieving three successful exits, including one to PwC. Alice co-founded a family office fintech software company that was featured in Forbes in 2023. Her experience spans raising capital for private equity funds as both a capital raiser and a sponsor, as well as securing venture capital funding as a startup founder. She's now a partner and the co-founder at Pender Hastings Capital. Without further ado, please enjoy this wide-ranging conversation with Alice Chen.
The Legends of Land show with Brandon Parker. Deconstruct the tactics of world-class land investors and learn tools to build a seven-figure land business. The Legends of Land show is starting now.
Welcome to the show, Alice. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you, Brandon. Thanks for inviting me onto the show. A pleasure to see you always.
Yeah, pleasure to see you too. Me and you have a cool origin story, so we'll maybe pop into that a little bit later. But yeah, to get us kicked off, what first drew you into the land development space, and what was your aha moment that made you want to launch your fund?
Yeah, so in the past 16 years, I've been a serial founder. I've been an entrepreneur across different industries. And throughout this journey, I've also been a multi-time fund manager. So in Canada, I ran a fund of funds that aggregated the best of the Canadian private equity space. So I've always been a very big fan of alternative investments. And as a private equity investor and now professional capital allocator, my business partner, James, and I were very much looking at interesting strategies in the United States. And we wanted to look for something that's in real estate and spend the last couple of years deep diving into different potential strategies and eventually landed on land development. And there's many reasons for that. And in a way, we're kind of lucky because I met our first land development partner at a conference about a year ago. And so it's an area that's not talked about very much as, like compared to multifamily syndication, for example. I mean, during the pandemic, it seems like everyone and their neighbor started multifamily syndication, right? So a lot of deals are not penciling out these days. So what we're looking for as a private equity firm is, first of all, we're looking for a really big problem to solve, right? Because we are going to be pouring a lot of bandwidth and human capital, time and energy into solving a problem. We want to make sure the problem is big enough so that it's going to be something we can work on for the next 5-10 years. So land development fits that. And yet we want to be agile enough so that we're not just going into something that really major players like the Blackstones and BlackRocks, like they can come in and just all of a sudden take over the market. And so that also fits that thesis. And thirdly, we're looking for something that has a high barrier to entry. And land development is definitely one of those asset classes. So let me tell you a little bit more about what land development is. It's really two parts. It's land entitlement as well as horizontal development. And, I'm sure you're familiar, but just wanted to make sure the audience knows. So land entitlement is where you go and you work on the paperwork, right? So you're working on getting the right zoning and permits, doing the environmental studies so that your raw land can become a piece of buildable land. So once you have the land entitled, then you go into the process of horizontal development. So as opposed to vertically development, developing something like that's building a house or building a tower, a horizontal development is where you go in and you build the roads and infrastructure on a piece of land so that you turn the raw land into buildable lots. So we're the capital partners to best-in-class land developers in the country that turn raw land into buildable lots for national home builders like the D.R. Horton, Lennar, Toll Brothers, a lot of them public companies. So that's what we do.
And why is there such a high barrier to entry in the land entitlement and horizontal development? And why does that make it so someone like or a company like BlackRock isn't agile enough?
I think it's a two-part. So First of all, there are a couple of public companies in land development. Like, for example, the Four Star Group is one example. So it is definitely a multi-billion-dollar market company. But this industry, it's very interesting. It's polarized. You're either on a smaller scale or you have to be a really big company. And the reason is because for every land development project, let's say if you're building a project of 500 single family homes, you're looking at probably a minimum of $10 million of land acquisition and construction costs. And the developer has to actually personally guarantee the loan. And the loan would be 75% of the capital that's required for the project to take place. And the rest of the capital stack would be deposit from the national home builder or the home builder that's buying land from you, as well as the equity. And so I think most land developers are real estate operators by background. So they're not good at fundraising. And that's why we constructed a fund to become their capital partners. So we invest in the equity piece of that capital stack. But because the capital stack with the 75% being the debt piece, with the requirement of the land developer having to personally guarantee, that really limits a lot of players, right? So how many players do you know can personally guarantee tens of millions of debt? And there's not too many people that can do that. And so it's kind of interesting where we want to become the capital partners to land developers that have the ability to scale beyond being more of a smaller scale operation doing small projects like one or two at a time, right? So we have luckily like very strong operating partners that want to get scaled and become the next Four Star.
And how did you find your operating partners, and how long did that take? How many do you have?
So it's a little bit of a lucky break. So as I said, we found the space of land development by happenstance. So about a year ago, I was at a real estate mastermind conference and I stumbled across a land developer. So he's our first major operating partner. And then he basically told us about this little known area of horizontal development. And so as we dug into it, we're like, wow, this is amazing. And what's really amazing is that you actually have a signed contract, a forward purchase contract with the home builders coming in to buy the land from you after your project. So they either come to you and say, we want to build on this piece of land, or they invite you to participate in the bid process. But let's say if you win the bid, then what happens next is that you work out the terms. Like, you know how much you're buying the entitled land at, and then you know how much they're going to pay you once you're done the horizontal development. So you lock in the delta, like you lock in the profit on day one, and you have a papered exit that's built in. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for 16 years. I haven't seen too many business models like that, if any, where you work on something, but you have the exit built in. Show me something that works like that.
Yeah, you're almost market making for land.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
that's slick. How often do you have like a directive from the national home builder, like we want to buy in this area, and then you're going out and hunting down the land? And how often is it where you find the project and then shop it, or do it the other way around?
Yeah,
What's that
so
look like?
everything's very data driven. And so most likely than not, like most cases, we're being approached by the national home builders. So they come to us and then they say, we're looking to build a master plan community of 1,000 homes on this tract of land. Can you do the horizontal development or can you do the entitlement? And so there's zero guesswork. Like, there's never a chance where we go and do the work on a piece of land, hoping that, 3 years later, 5 years later, someone's going to come and take it from us. It doesn't work that way. We work in reverse engineered way so that we have the exit on day one. And everything is very data driven. So everything's based on migration data. So even on the part of the national home builders or any scale home builder, they don't blindly go and create a community based on what they hope the population would gravitate towards. Like, they just really, it's more a science than an art. And that's how we work with them.
When you look at the model, you've de-risked it a whole bunch. What do you think the main tail risks are?
It's mostly macro risks. So for example, the macro risk relating to the behavior of the home builder. So right now we are in, very uncertain times, right? So the markets are kind of fluctuating every day, and there's talks about the tariffs, and it's just a lot of uncertainty. So one thing to keep in mind is that our projects are forward looking. So just because the market's tanking today doesn't mean people don't need homes 2 years from now, 3 years from now. So it's just like people in the stock market. Everyone's saying, okay, it's a good time to buy today because you're buying the dip. So when you buy in the dip, you're looking for harvest in the recovery. Same thing in our space. So when you are just noticing, okay, the market is good, the sales data is good, and there's a lot of inventory of new homes being built that's being moved. By the time you notice that and you want to jump in, it's too late. You have to do the prep work, right? So right now, we're doing the prep work during the hard time so that in 2 years and 3 years, the market turns around. That's when we harvest. And so the major risk is really in the home builder's behavior. Like if some sort of very large scale unforeseen macro events that happen to move them away from those projects, even though we have a signed contract. I mean, those contracts are typically honored. So unless something catastrophic happens, it's mostly, I think the risk is quite mitigated. And at the same time, our land development partners actually shop the project around. So even if they have a contract with D.R. Horton, they make sure that on the same site, maybe 1,000 lots can be split off into 2 or 3 chunks. And then they shop around with other kind of plan B alternative developers that want to come in and build the homes. So you just never know, but we do everything we can to mitigate the risk.
And macro, it seems like there's been this thing going on where home prices are inflated, but there's also constrained supply. Do you have insights like how the home builders are thinking about that? Obviously, they're continuing to build. So are there any unique angles that you've heard on that high prices versus this constrained supply and how that might play out?
Yeah, so definitely we have a very constrained supply. We are short about 4.8 million single family homes in this United States. And that's been a bit of a legacy pent up demand since the last financial crisis. And so home builders kind of really slowed down, around the 2010 times. And so that's why we have such a big supply gap. And, a company like a D.R. Horton, they're the biggest home builder in America, $35 billion annual revenue company. Guess how many homes can they build in a year? Just take a guess.
I I I don't want to embarrass myself.
At that scale, maybe 1 million, 2 million homes,
Okay.
pretty
Uh,
likely. No, they build about 100,000 homes a year
no.
at the
Okay.
max.
Yes. They're moving slow. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and then we're talking about the next one down being Lenore. I think there are 70,000, and then the third one is down to 50. And so the top 50 home builders altogether, it takes them all building at capacity about 10 years to fulfill that 4.8 million supply gap. So this problem is not going away anytime soon. We need a lot more homes to be built. But given the current uncertainties, sure, maybe some of the home builders are sitting on more inventory than what they're used to in the last couple of years. But it doesn't mean that they're not moving the inventory. Like they're in the business of building new homes. So they have to move the inventory. So they may be adjusting their margin expectations, but they're still moving the homes. And maybe they're adjusting product type. So instead of building fancier houses, they're building smaller ones. So we're seeing some of those type of adjustments, but overall, it's still pretty robust.
Yeah, I think that that's surprising. I would definitely guess that the biggest home builders all combined would be building more houses than that. I think that that's probably kind of a common misconception people don't
Yes.
even know they have. It's just like, oh, well, they could just build a million houses. Like, but okay.
Yeah,
Moves
I
much
was
slower. Yeah.
surprised. I know
Yeah.
myself.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And what other m- maybe outside our standard framework ideas have you heard to address that supply faster? Like if we stick it at how we're doing it, it could take 10 years. But is there any like outside ideas where, oh, these people are coming in and they're building 800 square foot houses with with robots or something, and they can pump out 1 million a year. Like, is there any interesting ideas on the horizon that could address that faster?
Yeah. So, I mean, for us and for our operating partners in land development, we don't get involved with the vertical constructions, but that's a great question. I think a lot of people are exploring steel frame builds. So, modular, that's a different term for it. So, when you talk about modular construction, it's not necessarily those container homes. It just means that the parts are assembled in the factory, kind of like cars. And so you can build homes like pretty fast, like within a couple months using the steel frame modular framework. So that may be something that can accelerate the home building. And of course, the home builders have their own economics that they have to maintain and up level. So, I don't know the math of whether it makes more sense for them to go in that direction or continue with the stick builds.
Um, how do you see investor demand evolving over the next year or two? And like, what kind of investor do you think that your fund is a perfect fit for?
Yeah, so our fund is a perfect fit for an investor that is not highly reactionary to the market conditions and understands that, okay, there's a big problem to be solved, and we're solving the problem alongside our operating partners, right? So it's an investor that recognizes that, okay, the 4.8 million single family home deficit has to be fulfilled. And maybe times are a little bit uncertain right now, but they believe that there's going to be this continued demand to be fulfilled, right? So an investor that is looking to quickly accelerate the growth of their capital because of this area being very high, highly profitable. So this is a way for them to get into the participation of land development. And we are short duration fund. So we wrap up the fund at year 3. The projects we invest in are 24 months to 30 months. And then we exit the projects and start distribution to the investors. We're looking at high 20s in terms of the IRR. And so within 3 years, when they get their principal investment back and the return, they're looking at a very high equity multiple. So 1.6 to 1.9 equity multiple. So someone that's in their prime capital growth years, I would say maybe age 40 to 55, they're wanting passive income. They're wanting the money to work hard for them while they maintain their active business or professions or other things. I think this is a great way for them to diversify and to see their capital quickly accelerate.
And you've been a part of some successful exits before, and you've raised funds before. Just at a higher level, how's this project feel to you compared to things you've done in the past? And just as an entrepreneur, what's this one feel like?
I think the most exciting part about this that I have not yet encountered before is that built-in exit. I mean, I wish that a lot of the endeavors I was involved in had this type of built-in exit. As a GP and LP in other funds, I mean, I'm oftentimes the LP in other people's funds. It seems like the exit timeframe is always very long, right? So if they say, okay, we're targeting 5 years, it's most likely 7 years, if not 10 years, right? So I appreciate an opportunity where the horizon is much shorter, the time horizon for exit. And I very much appreciate the fact that the exit is actually built in and papered. I mean, I've been a fintech co-founder and a co-founder in other industries. That exit is very difficult to achieve. So to have that on day one, and as a reminder that, okay, if I just execute on my strategy well, on my job well, then I'm going to hit this exit. Like that's unheard of. And I think that excites me the most. And so it feels exciting. It feels really great. It feels really grounded, actually. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, that's epic. I mean, that's like uh, you've been through a few different iterations of business, and being able to really appreciate that angle is cool. What's the most interesting place you've met one of your investors? Just kind of, outside of your standard channels.
You can meet investors really anywhere. I mean, it's just about keeping an open attitude and sharing your mission with people. So I think I've met some on the plane, like the person sitting next to me. happen to be from big family office, right? So things like that happen a lot. Or I meet people from communities involved in. So, for example, I'm part of the Entrepreneurs Organization. I'm on the board of the Silicon Valley chapter. So I've met people there. I've met people in other masterminds. I'm a big believer in personal development. I do a lot in that and go to events and walked on fire twice at Tony Robbins events. And so you meet a lot of growth mindset people and those type of people that tend to be open-minded and wanting to learn, and they make great investors.
Yeah, for sure. That was a bit of a leading question because I wanted to get in here that you and I met at a breathwork event.
Yes.
And it was like, and calling it an event, I think is a little bit overstating it. There was like 6 of us, and we showed
Yes.
up at a house in the Santa Cruz Mountains and did breathwork. And so that was very cool how we came across each other. So something interesting about you is you do a lot of personal development things. And so maybe talk about how you keep yourself mentally balanced as you're going through this just kind of hardcore entrepreneurship. How do you do the rest of your life?
Yeah, so I make sure that I just have a really awesome life overall. So business is a big part of my identity. So I think the day that I left my job as a lawyer, I have just never worked again. So the day that I started as an entrepreneur is day one of me not working ever again, because work is play, play is work for me, So I just am really great at enjoying the challenges as well as the rewards of being an entrepreneur. On the day-to-day basis, I have a lot of mindset and longevity practices or biohacking practices to keep me in a high performing state. Of course, some days are better than others, but I try to maintain a very high performing baseline. So, I had many chats about, like, for example, saunas, so detoxing is very important. Like I do yoga in a heated room. So that's along the same lines of being like giving yourself some space to detox, not only in terms of like sweating things out, but just detoxing your mind as well, like purging your mind, right? So in the mornings, I have a pretty regimented practice of 6 habits. So before noon, I make sure I do 6 things. It's movement, it's waking up with gratitude. Right now, I'm experimenting with something called lofty questions. So lofty questions would be something that helps you transform your identity, right? So to up level yourself, it's not just a matter of willpower. So for example, if I want to be a great podcast guest, right? So I have to first believe that I can be a great podcast guest. So it's about transforming identity. So a lofty question I would ask myself would be, why am I such a kick-ass podcast guest that's welcomed at so many shows, right? So asking yourself those questions, or things like, why am I such a great investor? Or why am I always attracting the right investment opportunity? So ask yourself those type of questions. Those are called the lofty questions. And they're meant to really help you transform your identity and your self understanding. And over time, it's the whole like be, do, have principle. You got to first become the person or be the person you want to be. And then from that place, you then start to do the things of that elevated, Brendan 2.0, Brendan 3.0. And then you'll have the stuff that you want to see achieve in your life. Right. So I think morning practices of gratitude, lofty questions, movement, energetic conditioning. I listen to podcasts or motivational stuff in the mornings. Maybe in the shower, I'm listening to Tony Robbins priming exercise. Like there's different things that I experiment with. I'm kind of an evolving process, just like everybody else. So I tweak my process all the time and try to optimize. So that all really helps.
The lofty questions is a cool angle at there's this personal development thought of trying to get your brain to believe something as if it's already done. You just like live and act as if you have this goal already achieved, and then your brain figures out the way to do it. And it's almost like a lofty questions is a little brain hack to like help yourself really do that type of thing.
Yes.
Um, that's cool. When you started your entrepreneurial journey, did you have these mindsets in place? Do you feel like they helped you get there? You feel like that you developed them over time? Or like, what was your mindset when you first just started, when you got out of being a lawyer and into entrepreneurial world?
Yeah, I think a little bit both. So I started my personal development journey around the same time I was practicing law. I practiced law at a big Canadian law firm for about 3 years. And so I think right around the beginning of my legal career, I have a high school friend that became seminar leader at the Landmark Forum. So Landmark Forum is kind of like the grandfather of all the personal development courses. I mean, it's great, so recommend it. It's been many years since I was in that realm, but I would say any type of personal development is great. It could come in different forms too. You don't have to go to events if you're more of a podcast listener or if you're a book reader. But I think being involved in personal development gave me the mindset of, okay, well, there's something out there. If I don't love my life right now, I have what it takes to actually change my life. I have what's within me to change that. So I think that gave me the first boost or the courage, initial courage to leave my six-figure profession. I mean, I was a young person at the time, like 26, 27. So to leave that type of salary, I had awesome office. I had assistant when I was 25, 26. So to leave that surrounding and go into the unknown, I mean, it's a scary thing for anybody, right? So I think the inner work is what gets you the outer results. So that kind of helped me. And then along my journey of being an entrepreneur, I continued to deepen my personal development. And then the more I develop, actually, the inner work, the better I do in the external world.
Do you feel like the inner work has taken you, like the focus off how hard you grind and more towards how effective you are with your time? Or what's your thought on just hard work in general? How many hours a day do you work, weeks, days a week? And how do you balance that and think about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I really demand high performance out of myself. So high performance doesn't mean necessarily the longest hours. Like, for example, I don't believe that working 80 hours a week is good for your well being or your business. I think if you are very aligned with your soul's purpose, if you will, or in another way to say it, your authentic self or your highest and best self in business term, you shouldn't feel like things are grinding. Like if you're feeling like you're grinding, then that means that there's some type of inefficiencies that's going on. So one, you could be maybe working on something that's not super aligned with what you're supposed to do, right? So that's one thing. So you have to look at that. And secondly, if you feel like, yeah, you're in the right lane doing the right thing, then maybe it's a systems issue. Do you actually have systems, right? So have you created systems to incorporate leverage, right? Leverage could be more capital, more humans, more whatever, like I know you do a lot of AI. So the grinding feeling, I think sometimes comes from not having systems. So either not being aligned with your purpose or not having the right systems or not having the right people or even the right technology to help you accomplish your mission.
Yeah, I think that every once in a while I'll get into the perfect flow of something that I'm just loving the project, and then it's all of a sudden I work just unlimited amount of days in a row
Yeah.
without it, just because I'm loving it.
Yeah, then
And
it's not grinding. Like, and
yeah,
that's being the
then
flow. Yeah, and I love that when that happens to me too.
and that's the best. And so I try to like keep myself bouncing between projects, of course, that are focused with our mission, but try to keep myself in those where I'm most effective, and then try to hopefully delegate the stuff where I start to feel like I'm grinding. So what's your longer term goals with this project and then in the future, 10 years down the road?
Yeah, so I actually feel I don't know why, but I feel a strong resonance with land development. So one is a very big problem to solve. I see the opportunity from a business perspective. And at the same time, I always work on something that I find meaningful. And so if you look at what we do, the ultimate meaning is that we're part of the value chain or supply chain that helps people express themselves through home ownership, right? Home is so important. Home is kind of the first place where you self express. And it's so important to me because it's a sanctuary where I return to. So that's where I live my life. So, after a hard day's work, you go home and you maybe see your family or maybe whatever your situation is. Home is so important. And I think that providing that place for connection and self expression is such a meaningful thing that I feel like I'm doing making the world a better place by doing my part in the supply chain. So I want to continue to focus on this and really amplify the excellent people doing excellent work here. So I really enjoy working with some of our operating partners. And I think helping them amplify their game is something that I can really take pride in and also feel really proud about. I want to be involved in a team that makes a unicorn company. So I haven't had a chance to do that. And that's something very much on my bucket list. So I don't care about becoming a billionaire, but I would love to become part of a team that's so focused on this mission that makes a great impact in the world that gets to unicorn status. So that's, I think, for the next 10 years of my career, that's what I'll be focused on.
How do you find A-plus players on your team and partner up with them? And what's the first iterations of that look like, from idea to putting together the small group, founding, co-founding like you did? What did that look like, and how do you think about that?
I think over the last 16 years, I've had my fair share of failed or excellent partnerships. So a lot of it has to do with just meeting enough people, but being very selective. So it's a bit of a numbers game. And at the same time, it has to do with you knowing yourself. So you have to know where you shine and where you have shortcomings and be very honest, right? So I would partner with someone that has the skills that I don't have, right? Or I would look for people that I resonate with, we're on the same kind of frequency or vibrations. There's different ways to call out that resonance, but basically you're looking for people that you have ultimate alignment, right? So in business terms, you're looking for alignment in values and in vision and in how you work, right? And so, for example, because I don't believe in working 80 hours a week is like the ultimate solution. I just explained why. So then if I have a business partner that works 80 hours a week, and if they believe that's the only way to go about creating a really successful outcome for the business, then we have an energy leakage or a values discrepancy. So then I don't think that would be a really successful and fruitful long-term partnership because of this values discrepancy. So I think you want to think about yourself as a captain, right? So if you're leading your boat on some expedition and you're going through the storm, challenging times, you want to make sure that the people that are in your crew on your boat are aligned with you. And first of all, believes in your vision, like shares your vision. And then your co-pilot, your co-captain, you want to be very aligned. Otherwise, you're canceling each other out, right? So you're going in this direction, but then they're going in the other direction, and ultimately you go nowhere. So I think that alignment is very critical.
And you have a co-founder, it sounds like. What are your roles? How do you see those broken down? What are you both good at a high level?
Yeah, so I'm actually very honored. My co-founder is actually my original mentor in finance. So I met him about 12 years ago when I had my first exit from business and had some capital to invest. And at the time, I was very focused on learning finance and learning private equity. And James was just starting his first private equity fund. And so I was an early investor, did really well, and just kind of learned a lot from him and, fundraise for his fund. And later on, of course, I branched out to look at other fund managers and invest in other things. But this time around, it's a little bit like the band members kind of disbanded, but we all came back together on the reunion tour. Yeah, so I'm very grateful and honored to partner with my original mentor. And he is very quantitative. So he is a CPA for 24 years. And he was an auditor as well as a partner in corporate finance at a major accounting firm. And from there, he branched off to start his private equity fund. So he brings a very quantitative skill set to the table. And of course, seniority, like he's older than me, so more senior in terms of the time and market. I bring to the table legal skills. So I do a lot of risk assessment and litigation from a legal perspective. And yeah, and we're very complementary.
That's great. Um, and for investors who are listening, possible investors, what should they consider when they're deciding to invest in your fund versus other types of real estate opportunities? I know that the de-risking.
Yeah, there's a couple things. I think one is if you want to get into real estate, there's two buckets. So do you want to be involved or invest actively, or do you want to invest passively? So if you're someone that likes to do home improvement stuff or manage properties or manage tenants, okay, then you're probably a good fit as the first type, right? So if you like high degree of control, doing things yourself, and go ahead and do fix and flips, go ahead and do, I don't know, Airbnb rentals. There's different ways to make money in real estate actively. But if you're someone like me, I don't like tenants, toilets, home improvement, property management, all of that, then learn to invest passively. So if you're learning to invest passively, then start learning to figure out how to do due diligence on the fund manager, on the operator, on the thesis. I actually have a lot of educational materials on my YouTube channel. You can go to my website. It's alicechencompanies.com. And there's a link to my YouTube channel. I teach a lot of masterclass content on private equity fund construction, due diligence process, how to create passive income through investing. So yeah, I mean, of course, there's way more information out there than my content. And so I think just start learning and start investing. Investing is kind of like riding a bike. Until you start to do it, you don't really know what you don't know.
Give a rundown of the investment opportunity again. How much you're trying to raise, minimum investment, other numbers around it, just to kind of summarize that for people.
Sure. Yeah, so we have a fund that's open right now. Our target raise is 15 million. The minimum investment amount is 100,000. You have to be an accredited investor, and you're looking at a 3-year fund life, right? So in 3 years, you'll get your money back in the return. You're looking at high 20s in terms of IRR. So, about 27% return per year. And by the end of the 3-year period, you can expect an equity multiple of 1.6 to 1.9. So that means if you invested 100,000, when the fund wraps up and you get all your distributions, you should be expecting to get back 160 to 190,000.
And you're actively raising capital right now. What's your vision for success look like 12 months down the road?
Yeah, so we want to have the fund raised and closed and want to have deployed into 6 projects across different geographies. So the same type of projects we explained, and and then just geographically diversified with different home builders as ultimate customers. And so we, with 15 million, we can deploy into 4 to 6 projects. So that would be a success.
Beautiful. This is a fun question that I usually wrap up with. Last question I usually ask is, if you could send one message out on Twitter or X, everyone in the world would see it. So it's just got to be short and poppy, and everyone in the world could see it. Doesn't even have to be business related, just one message everyone would see. What would it be?
Oh, that's a hard one. So let me think. Yeah, that's like my one message to the world. I think stay centered and stay grounded and cut out the noise and follow your instincts on doing the right thing. So I think in, a time like this, it's important that we all get centered and all get grounded and not be too reactive in terms of making business choices or life choices. I think cutting through the noise to get to the truth is something that we all need to practice right now. So I would say that would be my message today to the world.
Big time. Well, Alice, it's been wonderful talking to you, getting to know more about your business, and I can't wait to hear from one of your operating partners here in the future. And what's the best place for people to find you online and get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I invite everyone interested to visit my website. It's Alice Chen Companies. Chen is spelled CHEN, AliceChenCompanies.com. Over there, you'll find a way to get in contact with me, a link to my YouTube channel, my LinkedIn newsletter. I look forward to hearing from you.
All right, wonderful. Thanks for coming on the show, Alice. See you again, hang out with you again, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for having me,
The
Brendan.
Legends of Land Show.